Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grit and Glamour. I'm your host, Ruby Veridiano, and today's episode is dedicated to Native American Heritage Month. And on today's show, I have I am lucky enough to have a Native fashion designer and beadwork artist as my guest. Her name is Delina White, hailing from Minnesota, and she's going to be sharing with us her design philosophies and how it intersects with her identity as a Native American woman. We're also going to be talking about why she chooses to prioritize gender fluid clothing in her work, as well as what we can learn from Native wisdom to shape the future of fashion. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to welcome onto the show Delina White.
Hi, good to see
Hi.
you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. Tell us a little bit more about where you're tuning in from.
I am located in a village on my reservation. My reservation is the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe in northern Minnesota in the United States.
Oh, I love it. And I said this before our broadcast, but I love the lavender. You look stunning.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. It goes really well with the wampum.
Well, Delina, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Before we get started, I'd love it if you could share a little bit more about you. You've already shared where you're from, but maybe you can share with us a little bit more about how your upbringing has inspired the work that you do today.
Sure. I learned how to do beadwork from my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. Her name is Maggie King. She lived to be 94 years old, and she was a master beadwork artist. But she didn't realize, or she would never call herself a master artist, but she was. And she taught me how to do beadwork, and I, throughout my life, have done beadwork, but it's only been recently, like September of 2014, that I received a huge grant and I decided to be an artist full time. So I am taking my beadwork and I'm creating fabric from it. So I'm always based in my traditional foundations of my values, beliefs, and culture, but I'm also making clothing that's relevant to today. So it's contemporary, mixing contemporary with traditional.
Yes. And tell us a little bit more about your design philosophy, because I've read that you do prioritize gender fluid clothing. And how does that intersect with your identity as a Native woman?
Mm-hmm. Well, my design philosophy is based on the 7 values of the Anishinaabe culture. And Anishinaabe is the name of my tribe, of what my tribal nation, of what we call ourselves. We're also known as Ojibwe in Chippewa, but we call ourselves Anishinaabe. And our 7 values are honesty, love, kindness, and just really based on love. And so it's about creating art for the community. And it's my community wants to show pride in their cultural heritage, and we can do that by the clothing that we wear. And when I talk about fashion apparel and being a fashion designer, a lot of people think of it as something that's luxurious, but they don't realize that everybody is participating in fashion. Like every morning when you wake up and you go to the closet and you think about, what am I going to wear today? What type of a statement do I want to give people? A message to send people about myself? Am I going to be in a meeting? Do I need to be strong? Do I need to be a little more loving? Do I need to be ready for the day? And my daughter says when she's, ready to be a strong woman warrior, she wears her red lipstick.
I think we got the same idea today.
Yes, me too. So that's the philosophy, and including our Two-Spirit community, which is the LGBTQ, and then Two-Spirit is what the Native people call themselves, who are both male and female, or whatever their gender identity is. And I believe, because of our 7 values based on love, that we include everybody in our community and everything that we do. So I always use two spirit models, whether it's a male who identifies as a female, or a female who identifies as a male, or the vast range of gender identity. And it's just a part of being inclusive about who we are, and that everybody needs to appreciate one another.
Yeah, and I love that finally fashion is catching up to these values that I think it seems like has already been embedded in your cultural, kind of upbringing, that these are things that you honor in people. These are the identities, different gender identities are things that you naturally respect and honor in people. And I think that in the last few years, there's been more of a conversation around that in the fashion industry. And I'm excited to be able to include your voice in that, because it seems like this is something that you've invested in, not even before you became a fashion designer. So
yes, absolutely. And it's about loving your community and everybody who's a part of that community. And my nation, all nations of Native people, have never ostracized or excluded anybody from the community. And we participate and love each other as family members, and everybody participates in the family and gives what they can to the best of their ability. And we recognize that and appreciate it and honor it.
I love that. And I love bringing guests like you who are on to this show who share the same values as I do. I also am so committed to this idea of collective and community and taking care of each other, which sometimes, that conversation doesn't exist in the fashion industry. There's always like this kind of dominant narrative in the fashion industry of people competing with each other and things like that. So I really try to bring values onto this show that really promote community and collaboration over competition. So I appreciate you saying that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that as like an indigenous business person, that there's a lot of questions that you need to ask yourself, and you need to know what your purpose is. And people are always asking you, as a business person, what are your goals, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now, and 10 years from now? And it's really a difficult thing to think about and to consider, and to really create some goals, that are so long term, because everything changes, and you have to be so flexible, and you have to be able to change what it was that you were originally thought was your goal to meet whatever else is relevant and current for the times. Like, for example, the COVID, how we're all having to immediately change the way that we communicate with each other and the way that we work, and come to a mindset about how to be healthy and happy being isolated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thankfully, the internet allows us to still connect with each other. And I think that if it wasn't for this year, I wouldn't have thought about creating this show, and probably not connected with so many people around the world like yourself. So I want to move into the next question. There's also a large conversation in the fashion industry about cultural appropriation. What is your advice for brands, bigger brands, more established brands who want to collaborate with artists like yourself, but instead doing it in a way that truly honors the work instead of exploiting it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you said the key word there, which is collaboration. And I did a collaboration, myself and my daughter Lavender, with Gudrun Sjödin, who is a Swedish designer. And she has stores in 14 different countries throughout the world. And she was doing a collection of clothing based on different cultures and ethnicities. And when it came to Native Americans, she contacted me and said, do you want to do something? I want to do, a Native American style design in my clothing. And so I really respect that. And I believe that that is the important part, and that's key to cultural appropriation, is working with designers who are from that ethnic background and who have the authority to create clothing that is honorable to their culture, and who can create some authentic and original designs as well. So it's not taking it from somebody else and manipulating it and calling it their own, something that is original from the people.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes too, what brands sometimes get wrong is that they take the aesthetic without understanding maybe some of the symbolism that exists in a particular color or a particular pattern. And they're not recognizing that, oh, this might have been something that actually has a sacred meaning. And we probably shouldn't, use this or reproduce this without adequate not even just permission, but as you say, like advising someone who has the authority and the knowledge to be able to say, okay, let's figure out a way to do this that honors and respects everybody involved.
Right. And I also believe that there's so many people who are working in their fields of expertise, such as fashion design and designers and everybody behind the scenes, the photographers, the stylists, the cinematographers, the lighting people, the technical people, the sound. There's so many people who are ethnic who you can call upon and say, hey, we need to do a collaboration and we know that you have the skills that need to be done. So, excuse me, we need to work within our own communities too to provide them with opportunities that they otherwise would not have.
Yes, building that pipeline, I think, is very crucial. And I also appreciate that you said that it doesn't just stop in the design process. Creating a product requires a huge production team. And the more that you can integrate many different voices and representative voices in that production process, then you can tell the stories with a lot more honor for the legacy that it really intends to create. So thank you for that. And shifting now on the consumer side, can consumers wear Native American designs without culturally appropriating it? And what would be the distinction between appropriation and appreciation as a consumer who might not know a whole lot about your community, but loves your designs and wants to make sure that if they are wearing one of your designs, that they are doing so respectfully?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the importance of purchasing directly from the fashion designer and their brand, their label, because it's that person who is going to safeguard their traditional values and their traditional beliefs and their traditional cultures. And like myself, I would never reproduce or produce anything for public consumption if it wasn't a general design. Something that would be sacred or that we use in ceremonies, I absolutely would not put it out there for public consumption. So I think that we have trust in our people to do the same thing. And because of the social media, that you can get a response very quickly from people. And if you were to do something where you're crossing the lines and doing something that's ceremonial that should not be available for public consumption, I think you're going to be told about it right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as a consumer, are there any particular questions that a consumer should ask if they were going to wear one of your designs, for example?
Well, it's really nice because I do get non-native people asking me, is it okay if I wear this?
Yeah.
So it just shows me that people are have integrity and they want to do what's right. So I think if it's out there, you can reach out to somebody and you can ask if you have any questions.
Yeah, good. Yeah, thank you. Now, as you know, sustainability is a big priority in the industry, which is such a thrilling thing for folks who care about the planet and for the people. And, I came from an activist background, so really wanting to come into the fashion industry with a lens of change making. So I'm really appreciating now that sustainability has become a priority. But from your perspective, coming from where you come from and from your vantage point, what do you think is missing from the conversation?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that as a designer and being in the public eye, that it's really important that I take this opportunity to be able to say some things. some things that are important to my community and some of the issues that affect us, and to address some of the barriers that Native people have across North America and all indigenous people. So I think it's really important too that a person as a consumer become a knowledgeable consumer. Like if there are things that you're interested in, do some research, reach out to people and ask questions. And I think that anything about business is really a difficult thing. Like I call it the having to make choices of the best of two evils. Because I think that any time that you're producing something new, that it's going to eventually turn into garbage. And then how does the planet deal with it? So I think what we need to do is try to make personal choices that are going to leave the least footprint on our environment, and to purchase items, vintage, to use them over and over again. Go to the Goodwills, go to the rummage sales, because there's things that can be made new again and can be repurposed. And let me see. All of a sudden I got a blank. But get good quality items and keep them for a long time and pass them along. So just try to get the most use out of the things that you're purchasing.
Yeah, and as far as sustainability habits, there are a lot of things from my cultural background that were naturally sustainable, but we never called it that. Like just the idea of reusing things. That's just something that has been really natural for a lot of immigrant families, for example. Is there anything coming from your community that has just been a natural part of your daily life that is now being touted as sustainability?
Well, I think that because of our us being tribal nations, that we have a camaraderie with all Native people throughout the United States and Canada, that we feel like we're brothers and we're sisters. So we're always looking out for each other. We feed each other. We have our traditional ways of living and giving. And it's just amazing, like when you go to a powwow somewhere, because I come from a very I want to say powwow family, where we participate in powwows. We go to traditional powwows and contest powwows throughout the United States and Canada. And no matter where we go, we're always treated with the most loving and kindness. And we come home with a carload full of gifts because we gift each other. And it's just amazing about the way Native people give. So that's inherent in the way that we are. And so that's, completely sustainable.
Yes, I love that. And I think it's not just sustainable, but I would argue also regenerative. It's not just about protecting what's there, but pouring into what's there so it can grow into something else and it can continue in a circular way, continuing to feed and nourish each other. So I love that. Yes. And you mentioned, Delina, the powwows. For those who don't know what a powwow is, can you elaborate as to what that means?
Sure. We have dance celebrations throughout the communities. And in my reservation, Leech Lake Reservation, we have 14 communities. And from those 14 communities, I want to say that we have at least maybe 5 or 6 different powwows within those communities. So we have a structure within our reservation like a small city. So we have people within the communities who do a lot of organizing for the community. And with COVID, they've been giving away dog food and cat food, and they've been getting food from the food shelves, and they've been distributing them. They drive them to people's homes. So there's a lot of caregiving within our communities. And these people that are key leaders within the communities will put together community events as well too. So we'll do walking so that we can fight diabetes and heart disease and these illnesses that are coming to us because of bad food and lack of exercise and all these things that are kind of part of the dysfunction of our historical trauma that has occurred to us throughout the centuries. So, so what you were saying is really key about the perpetuation of these products, and it goes beyond, the physical item of, say, a dress or a jacket. It goes into the feeling of teaching your children and your children's children to give and to take care and to provide.
Absolutely.
So
I love that.
it's a grand philosophy.
Yes, yes. And it's such a privilege to be able to amplify your voice. I think that as we go through this year of, a lot of people losing many things, I think what we still have is each other, and to be able to remind ourselves that we have the ability to take care of each other, to protect one another, and to just be generous, not only with, not only with resources, but really just with time, and caring for one another. I think is something that I love. I love that message. So,
oh, you know what? I never did get to what the powwows are.
yeah.
So then we get together and we dance and we sing and we wear our traditional clothing according to the different dance styles, according to the songs that we have, because the songs will have specific meanings and certain ways of dancing to it. And everybody comes naturally dressed in whatever is inherent to the way that their style of dancing is. So we get together and we dance, and it's a social occasion. And a lot of times people are on their best behavior and they'll conduct ceremonies there. And but for the most part, it's a social gathering.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll all be ready for a powwow once lockdowns are over. So
Absolutely. I so missed it this year, sitting in the evening, listening to the drums and watching people dance.
yeah, beautiful. Now, Delina, another part of your story that I appreciate is the fact that you became a fashion designer at a later point in your life. What is your advice for someone who wants to have a career change, no matter the age? And what's something that you've learned about trusting the natural timing of your life?
Okay. Well, I was raised, I was born in 1964. So I was raised before color TV, before computers, before electrical typewriters. And my grandmother's house didn't have electricity or running water. So it was, and then on the reservation, we didn't even get electricity or running water until the 1970s.
Yeah.
So it was a very beautiful, beautiful lifestyle. And I would sit quietly, and my grandmother would do her immaculate and just tedious beadwork, and I would do the simple things like just stringing beads on a string, and then hanging it like this. And then eventually I started doing more complicated things like the barrettes and the earrings, and then I went into moccasin making and bags, and then I went into making the apparel, the traditional apparel, and that is all really time consuming. And years of doing that really has paid a toll on my shoulders and my neck, and then even my wrists. So there are times when I have to stop and I have to wear braces, and so it's not something that I can do anymore, hour and after hour, day after day, week after week, month after month. So it takes me a little longer now because I have to have those breaks in between what it is that I'm doing. And so in order, and I have been blessed that people like my work. So I'm able to turn that beadwork, but through photography and through technical applications, on the computer, to be able to digitize, my work and to create fabric from it. And then that is a way of making it more available to the public, because one piece of beadwork is just so expensive and time consuming to make that it's a whole lot easier to create fabric from it. And you can recreate these designs by placing, the beaded designs into different patterns, I guess I want to say. Yeah, so what you're seeing right now are some of the haute couture things that I make, and I want to get back to that as well. Making the one of a kind items, and really working with some of the indigenous materials, putting that into the clothing, and just having it be a beautiful piece made for one item. And so I was awarded a major grant that I'm not supposed to talk about yet until February. But for me, it's like, oh, thank goodness I'm going to be able to get back to the beadwork, and I can't make fabric if I don't have the beadwork as the foundation to photograph and then create the fabric from. So it has been 3 years for me since I've actually done beadwork, because I've been working with the apparel and the fabric. So this next coming year, I do have a major fashion show at the Santa Fe Indian Market, which is the Swaya haute couture show. And I'm going to be making 20 pieces for that. So I'm going to have 10 male and 10 female. And you know how you can only have so many models out there because each model takes up a moment in time. So because of time constraints, I'm going to have them come out as couples, but I'm still going to be able to show 20 items. That's my plan. So that's the big thing for 2021. So hopefully, I hope that the pandemic is over so that we can get together and start doing some of these events where we can gather together. And in the meantime, I'm going to start producing new beadwork, which I'm really excited for.
Great. Yeah. And I feel like, as I remember from a previous conversation that we had, tell us a little bit more about the transition that you had into being fashion, owning your role as a fashion designer, because I know that you have been a beadwork artist for quite some time. And as I remember, fashion design is quite new in your journey. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that transition?
Sure. So, like I was saying, that art and beadwork has always been a strong part of my life and who I am. And I couldn't imagine, life without art. And, but being raised up during those times, my mom and my father were supportive to me and really encouraging me into getting into a man's field. So a lot of things have changed, and that's why I thought it was important to talk about being raised in the 60s and the 70s when things were so much different than the way it is today. Like all of the antiquated ideas about women's roles and men's roles. So my father was a mechanical draftsman, and my mother was a hairstylist, and she worked in factories and always worked like in 2 and 3 jobs at a time because I was actually raised by my mother as a single child. So, but my father was in my life as, a parent as well as he could, although they were divorced. Well, anyway, they encouraged me to get into this man's field, and my mother wanted me to be a draftsman as well, to work in architecture, because I had a fascination for bridges and buildings. And it ended up being that I got a degree in business. And because business, for some reason, came easy for me, I understood economics and the way, businesses work and marketing and ethics and all those areas, except for accounting. I really struggled with that. So anyway, I got a degree in business, and I always wanted to own my own business. And over and over again, I call my journey like a marketing, like a test market. So I would set up at all these different venues and trying to see which venue welcomed my beadwork the best. And some of the traditional items that we make, which are like birch bark baskets and sweetgrass baskets and all these indigenous items that we use to create, at one time were utilitarian or functional items, but have now turned into more art.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I have always been producing beadwork, and I hardly have anything. I keep, the outfits that have been discarded by my family members, and we pass them down to the next generation that of the family members. So they are like heirloom items. And I received a big grant, and I thought, this is it. I've worked for my tribe, my tribal nation, for over 20 years. It's
Mm,
something that I always wanted to do. With all of my test marketing, I thought, this is something I'm going to try. Um, and so it was only 6 years ago now that I
mm,
jumped the job track and became an artist full time, and have been just really focused on that and really pushing it. So I work like maybe 12 hours every day, and
mm.
it's only me, so I'm doing everything, from the producing to the communicating to the, presentations to, the sewing, just absolutely everything and more. But there's way more that goes into it than that. And so I have to apologize to people that I've missed, because I've missed a lot of opportunities that, deadlines passed by and I wasn't able to participate. But but I really, really need to emphasize about how blessed I am, because I could not do it without all of the support of people. So, there, like I said, there's all the technical professional people that I have who are behind the scenes, all of the magazine people, who are interested in hearing my story. So, without people, I wouldn't be anywhere.
Yeah, but it also sounds like all of the experience that you had prior prepared you for a moment such as this. I think sometimes, we tend to be very impatient about when we want things to happen and we want them to happen right away. And I think what I like about your story is that I feel like that moment came and you were prepared for it, because essentially, luck is just preparation meeting opportunity. And I think that is, essential in the journey, is just taking every experience that you have and being able to then use that as preparation for the mission that you have, that you are going to execute.
Right. I think what's important about that is, the youth, young people, is to stay ambitious, because life is going to take you in all different directions, and you're going to go off this way and you're going to come back. To me, it was described as living life as a tree, where you go up and then you follow this direction and you come back and then you go again, and, but you're always moving forward. And so no matter what direction life takes you, always have that dream behind you and keep moving toward that dream. And then, at some point, you're just going to have to take a risk and see how it goes. And yeah, with the business background was really essential for me, because I have a foundation on, those philosophies and those practices. So I'm able to use my business background to move forward in pushing my art.
Yes. And that's a great point, because I think sometimes artists don't know how to be business people. And I think that is a very key thing to creating a sustainable longevity in the creative process. So
Yes.
I appreciate
And to
that.
talk to people. And I actually have a business coach too. So I have my support system, and my business coach is practiced in business and has written a book now. It's called The Damn Plan. And so she's able to help me with some of those financial aspects that I struggle with as a Native person with my 7 values. So
Mm,
those values that keep you grounded and keep you human, but yet, you have to have this capitalistic perspective too, because you have to be able to make an income for yourself and to be able to sustain your lifestyle with the art that you're producing, because I tend to want to give it all away, you
yeah.
know, and it's like, no, I really can't, because I have my bills to pay, and throughout my life, like I said, I'm 56 years old. Um, I have gained a lot of debt. So I have to pay off the debt for the life that I led.
Yeah.
I bought a lot of
Yeah.
things for my grandchildren. We had big Christmases, and, things like that. So.
Absolutely. And I love that advice because I think that it creates a realistic perspective as to what it actually takes to succeed. You could be the most talented artist, you could create the most beautiful designs, but if you're not grounded in certain things that will allow you to have an infrastructure for success, then you might not go as forward as, as far as you might want. So that's really great advice. And it actually takes me smoothly into my next question for you, because you had talked earlier about barriers for Native men and women who are entering professional industries. Can you talk about some of those barriers? Because, the show is all about the grit behind the glamour. So I think it's also important to address, like, what are some of the barriers, especially for those who are wanting to enter the fashion industry like yourself? What are some of the barriers that they might be facing, and how can they overcome it?
Well, I think some of the biggest barriers is like proving that you can do it and just fighting for an opportunity. Because when like I do a lot of cold calls, and right now I have developed a reputation. So I think it's really important to understand how important your reputation is. So if you have a goal in your life, you have to keep working toward that, and you have to continue to sell yourself. So you have to go door knocking, and you have to figure out a way to be able to express what it is that you do in a small amount of time, because people don't have the time for you, and then they have a perception about what it is that you do. And you have to say, I go beyond, I can do that, but I go beyond it. And I have had a lot of doors closed, and I showed up anyway. And I was told, nope, we've already made our decisions and you are not one of them, and I said, okay, I'll be there. So it's like, don't take no for an answer, and just go and do it. And, don't take anything personal, because everything is all professional, and that you can do it, and you have to prove yourself. So keep door knocking, keep doing it, even though people have these misconceptions about what it is that you do or who you are.
Well, I'm sure there are people watching right now who are seeing their stories reflected in yours. And I'm sure that, just like me hearing you, there is like a jolt of inspiration that reminds us that we have everything that we need. Already inside of us, and all we need to do is kind of step into it, and also shatter some of the limiting beliefs that we have within our own mindsets. And really being able to understand that, one of the things that I try to remember is that I come from such a strong legacy of ancestors. So how can I whenever I doubt myself, I just remember, like, wait a second, there has been so many lives that were lived in order to bring me into this world. So I look at the strength of the lineage that I come from, and then remember that whatever room I stand in, I don't just come as one, I come as 10,000 people that came before me. So,
right. So important. Yes, I think of things the same way too, about my ancestors are here with me, they're watching me, and they're going to support me.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Delina, for sharing your inspiration and your story with us. Before we wrap the episode, can you tell our viewers where they can find you and your work?
Yes, absolutely. Go to my website. It is, and I'll say it first and then I'll spell it. So it is IamAnishinaabe.com, and that's spelled IamAnishinaabe.com. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I am already following you on social media, Delina, and I look forward to following the rest of your journey. Thank you so much. And for those who tuned into today's episode, thank you for joining us. And I hope that you'll see us on the next episode of Grit and Glamour. See you then. Bye.